Hey everybody, this is Bryan Stallings. I'm Chief Evangelist with Lucid.
And I'm Emilia Breton. I'm an enterprise agile coach with JP Morgan Chase. So Bryan, I'm really wondering from our participants here, who really loves Zoom or video calls?
I can see the audience going, me, me, me. Everyone loves them, right? So go ahead
Yeah.
and put in
So
the
so
chat. What are your thoughts about that? Whether it's Zoom or Teams or any type of video call, it seems like everything today in the workplace has become a meeting where we might have had a few scheduled meetings throughout the day. If we're going to work with anybody except our own little self, it's going to be through some kind of connection through video. Like we didn't have that all day before, Amelia.
I know. So how are you liking the Zoom world?
Well, some of the meetings are really good. I don't want to discredit that, but some are awful and they're exhausting. And I think we could do much better.
Yeah, I find that in a whole lot of the meetings that I'm a part of, I just feel like a prisoner stuck on this PowerPoint hamster wheel.
Mm,
We come in, we hop on the wheel, it ends, and you're just abruptly thrown off the wheel. Have your 5 minutes back. We'll see you later.
right. The ones that are hard for me are the ones where it feels so abrupt, where in the past we would have had a chance to ease into the meeting, have some human connection, and we do the same at the end. It feels like we just abruptly jump into the agenda. There's oftentimes not even a description of our purpose or our objectives. Somebody's just driving through the agenda. And then the thing I hate the most is when they say, oh, we're done early. Instead of thinking, what could we do that's effective for our group with the few minutes that are left, they think, let's see, I'll give you those 14 minutes back. And then they drop us all
Yeah.
off a cliff and hang up the Zoom call.
Yeah, and I really want to normalize this because primarily as we've grown as leaders, what we've grown up with is focusing on the logistics, focusing on the materials, focusing on making sure I have an agenda, making sure that I send notes out afterwards. We haven't
Right. We're
really
all good
been
at that,
taught
right?
these skills. Yeah.
Right. Right. So you and I are
But
advocating that we need to make a change here. What are we looking for?
well, we're really looking to have wonderful meetings. Um, I find some meetings we can have a real beautiful experience in this new normal where we have these collaborative handoffs where we're working together across the globe to build things.
Right.
And those are the meetings that I really want to see emerge in the world for all of the leaders. And I think the key to that is facilitation and emotional intelligence.
Right. So we're here to make it very clear. We're calling to action that the leadership of the future needs to be really good at emotional intelligence and facilitation for these things to change.
So, why do you think we're not very good at it? What are you seeing?
Well, I see that when somebody isn't quite sure how to create that space, they quickly shield themselves, and they'll say things like, "Okay, show, let's get started," where the agenda could have begun with some human connection or a check-in with everybody to see how the group is doing. And so instead, the shields go up. Same with like, I don't really know how to facilitate in this new world, and so it's just about driving the meeting to conclusion.
Yeah. I think it really starts with being self-aware and understanding when you are throwing up that shield, right?
Right. You get a
And
sense of
getting
like,
curious.
there's an edge from here. Yeah. I'm getting anxious. Um, Maybe like what I experienced last week was I brought groups into breakout rooms for a few minutes in trios so that they could have a chance to check in. And then we were going to jump into the meeting. It's a quick investment of like 6 minutes. And I heard feedback afterwards that some people said that was great, but about 30% said, oh, that was hard. I didn't know these people. Are we going to have to do that in future meetings? Now, somebody with that shield would say, oh, I created something difficult for folks. I'm going to step far, far away from that in the future. Instead of thinking about, oh, that might have been too big a first step. What would be a half step that I could try with this group next time? And you and I
Yeah,
have
I
been
love.
colleagues for a number of years, Amelia, right? We've
Yeah.
worked with groups through this before, so we know it's possible.
Yeah, I really want to acknowledge your social awareness there. When you saw that with the group, you asked for feedback, you became more aware, and then figuring out, how do I manage that in the
Yeah,
future to make them more comfortable?
right.
I think
Rather
that's
than
something you're
retreat.
really masterful at.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think
So,
back to our meeting, when
mm,
we first met, and you created that you created an exercise that brought us all together.
right. So for
And when our
everybody in the
two
audience, sorry, in the audience, we're talking about when our two organizations were coming together for the first time, and it was a stressful environment. And so, what did we do? We scheduled a dinner the night before, right, Amelia, where we played a game
Mhm.
that enabled people to get comfortable with one another and break bread with one another before coming into maybe a more difficult place the next day.
Yeah, and what I loved about that was how it created these rounded corners. So it
Mm,
really, to us, set that container. We knew each other as humans. It started building that psychological safety that we know is so important from the work of Google and Project Aristotle and their rework, um,
right.
to really create that high performing team. So when we were laying out sort of what's your stuff and what's my stuff and who's going to have what, we weren't bumping into each other with those sharp corners. We weren't as protective. We knew each other as people. So we were able to really do innovative, great things across the groups.
Right. You're really calling out why there's significant value here, why it's worth the investment of, in a big meeting like that, of a couple hours in dinner the night before, or in a small meeting, a couple of minutes of human connection and a couple of minutes at the end of closing intentionally together.
Mhm. And these are learned skills. They're not things that we already know, right?
Right.
And as we're growing and being the leaders of the future, these are the things that make the big difference to helping us get to that place of high performance. So I really kind of want to explore getting into the action of growing the emotional intelligence, both um, our horizontal growth around the skills, but also
You
our vertical growth as leaders.
Right. So vertical growth meaning like upgrading our mindset. It's like new software for
Yeah.
the way that we think and interact with others. That's that vertical growth. So we need to work on that. And we do that as we explore emotional intelligence and as we
Yeah.
develop
I mean,
our
it's
awareness of others.
exactly our awareness of ourselves, our awareness of others, and then just our ability to be with it. So we're not spending as much of our energy on managing,
Right.
because it's become more natural. We don't get this stuff for free anymore in the new hybrid distributed world, that we've
It's not
come to
like you
be
can
in.
just
So
see the
we've got to
room
be,
again and right, bring all that in. We got to be aware in this new remote work.
yeah, we have to be really
Okay, so
intentional about it.
right, and we're describing a bit the emotional intelligence aspects. Where do we really need to focus when it comes to facilitation? What would be those first things that we're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I think it's starting with that human connection, just like you did in that event, and then creating the place to hear all of the voices. I mean, what that really does is allows us to include everybody when we can hear all those voices, and then making that place and that container really psychologically safe.
Yeah.
And once you've created that container, we need to be able to give it to our participants to fill it up with all of the wonderful, innovative stuff, and then
Right. So as a
close it well.
facilitator and leader, we can create the container and then they create the content instead of driving the
Yeah.
meeting as we've been describing. So if these are learned skills, um, we believe that as leaders, you need to go first, right?
Yeah.
You need to go first and work on these things and then start to demonstrate them within your organization and teams.
Yeah. As a leader, if I can take 5 minutes at the beginning of that meeting to allow people to connect, to look at things that aren't as tactical, it gives permission, it gives space for other people to do that outside of the meeting and in their own meetings.
right? We can say, this is how we do things around here. This is what we value. There's an outcome here that we seek to achieve that's more than just accomplishing an agenda. All right.
Yeah, it just
So,
becomes this fabric of our culture and of our organization, as opposed to just something that lives on paper.
all right. So we can role model that. Maybe we start, if we're uncomfortable ourselves, maybe we start seeking training or doing some reading or asking a mentor who's good at this to help us learn these skills. And then we bring that first.
Yeah, and
Nice.
feedback, right? I think some of the most valuable things that have helped both my emotional intelligence and my facilitation has been working with other leaders and getting feedback from them, and then getting feedback from the people I'm leading and the participants about what works, what doesn't work.
Right. That can be as easy as just saying, Amelia, do you have any advice for me now that
Mhm.
you saw the meeting that I facilitated today?
You were
Everybody loves to
awesome,
give advice,
Bryan, but you kept looking at the carpet.
right? Oh, okay. So what was that about? You might ask me. And I'd say, I was uncomfortable with this part. So I tended to not engage with people. Okay. So what is there for me to work on? Feedback just pointed out
Mhm.
something that's real for me that I wouldn't know about myself. We
Yeah,
call that
so
like holding up a mirror, right, Amelia? So what do I not see about myself that a colleague can help me see, and then I can work on that?
what would we
Well,
like to invite our leaders to do as we move out of
yeah, a
this?
couple of call to actions, right?
Yeah.
So I know sometimes we'll say it again. We invite you to work within yourself and with your teams to grow your competency with facilitation and to grow your own emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
What
Be
else would you
really
say about
intentional,
that?
because this is worth the time. I think it's
Right.
worth the time and it's worth the investment. Um, the other part I would say is you have to drop your shield first. As a leader, you have to be vulnerable um, to take those first steps. Because as leaders, we go first. And if we want to be successful in this new world, it really is hinging on growing our our emotional intelligence and our facilitation skills.
Yeah, maybe we can paint a picture a bit about what's on the other side as people work through this. So, what I would share is you and I brought two organizations together, which is where we built our relationship,
Mhm.
and it was a deliberate process, right? And
No.
it took a long time.
Mhm.
But what started out as a bunch of disconnected individuals who might have had some suspicions with one another, it turned into what you and I named a community where there was high trust and the ability to work with any other individual in the community, I think.
Yeah,
And
and
it was
through that,
focused
we were
on,
able to do far more than the sum of our individual parts. We really became this multiplier of each other, who were able to build things we couldn't have built alone. And I think that's really the magic that happens.
right, right. In today's world of complexity that we have, we really need to be able to accomplish work with others. And so these are key competencies for doing that. And, um,
Mhm.
and we recommend them to you both, that you work on both. All right, Amelia.
And you have to do it
Thank you for
first.
spending, right.
Thank you.
We go first. Thank you
Bye.
for spending the time with us today, Amelia.
Thanks.